What's up, crew? Welcome to Filming in Progress, the show that takes you backstage into the world of local businesses and the people who make them shine. Today, I have the pleasure of chatting with Quan, co-founder of McRally and Evil Corporation Brewing. Quan's motto is to keep it simple, explore and experience, do awesome shit, and inspire others to do the same. Quan, how'd you get here?
I dropped out of an airplane in 1985, and here I am. I'm just kidding. I am an immigrant. I was born in Indonesia in a refugee camp on an island. And it's an interesting, fascinating story. My parents grew up in Vietnam. Our heritage, we're actually Chinese. Parents grew up in Vietnam. And after the war, there wasn't a lot of prosperity or hope for the future. So they didn't know each other at the time. They had their own journey of trying to get out of the country. And even my uncle, he tried escaping on his own 2 times prior to when he actually got out with my mom. And both times he got thrown in prison. And you know, the prison there was kind of whatever, you can escape pretty easily, but you're always at risk of getting shot or whatever when you're trying to leave. So anyway, the 3rd time he tried to escape with my mom, they got out successfully, and they were on a boat, you know, a 10-foot boat with, I don't know, 100 people, and they made it out to Indonesia, ended up in Indonesia on this refugee camp. And my dad had a similar story in that he got onto a boat, tiny boat with, you know, 100 people. And the problem with my dad's situation was that he had cut his back on the propeller of the boat. And so he had a gash in his back and it got infected, and the motor died halfway along the journey. So they were floating out at sea for, I think he said it was about 21 days with no food or water. They had water from the rain, but that was about it. And people were at the time starting to get desperate and thirsty, so they would drink seawater, and people would die from starvation. So they were throwing, towards the end of it, they were throwing bodies off the boat almost on the daily. And they luckily found there was a fishing boat that had spotted them off in the distance and dragged them onto one of the islands, which ended up turned out to be a Red Cross refugee camp. And that's where he got treated and everything. And they said, well, you know, luckily you came in like today, because if it had been another day or 2, you would not have survived. And you know, the seawater actually helped him keep the infection under control. But otherwise, yeah, it was a dire situation. And at the time, it was a dire situation in that if you got caught trying to leave the country, you get thrown in prison, or they'd shoot you on the spot, and you know, that's the end of it. So it kind of shows a level of desperation that my parents were in at the time. And they met on this refugee camp, lived there for about 2.5 years, and that's where they fell in love, got married, and had me. And so I was born on that camp, and we got sponsored by the government, the Canadian government. It was 8 months old when we jumped on a plane and ended up in Calgary, and we started from nothing. We just had the clothes that we were wearing. We had no money, no family, nothing. You know, it's just my mom, my uncle, my dad, and me.
Wow.
So that's where we started. My dad, then, you know, they went to school and tried to, you know, they were in their late 20s at the time too, so it was tough to kind of go to school and earn a living at the same time. So my mom picked up English quite a bit quicker than my dad, but you know, still limited in her ability to converse with people. And then my dad's English is quite limited. He was the breadwinner. I think he worked 12 or 14 different jobs within the span of 2.5 years when they got here, and finally landed on auto body, and he stuck with auto body, moving around shops and even starting his own business at one point. But he stuck with auto body, and he retired during COVID, at the start of COVID. But that was really our anchor for our family. And just witnessing how hard he worked to raise a family of 6. I have 3 younger siblings. It really instilled a lot of values in all of us. You know, the hard work, determination, you know, not giving up and all that. So yeah. At the end of the day, we felt there was an obligation within each and every one of us to make the best of the situation and put ourselves in a better situation than we started out with. So Yeah.
Incredible. That's an incredible story. Do you remember much of that time? Like, I'm always curious as to when somebody's memory begins.
Yeah, I had very early memories. I would say around 3 years old or just before 3. Growing up, we were moving a lot in the first, 4 years in Calgary, just going from apartment to apartment. Big problem was having 2, 3 kids in a condo running around all the time. You'd get noise complaints and then you'd get evicted. So that was the situation that we were in, and my dad's job wasn't stable as well. So just a combination of factors. We were just moving around quite often, and then they sponsored some of my aunts and uncles who were living in Vietnam at the time, and so our family just got too big to stay in a 2-bedroom apartment, and so they were able to scrape enough money together to make a small down payment on a house in Forest Lawn, and that's really where we grew up. A 900 square foot duplex. We had 4 bedrooms, but there were like 10 people living in the house. That was my childhood, my upbringing. And Forest Lawn wasn't too bad at the time. You could still go out and play on the streets and feel pretty safe. But there were some pretty sketchy situations that we found ourselves in at times. Yeah. And, it was an interesting experience.
How do you feel like your upbringing over that time? So your immigration to Canada, growing up in all these different areas and that sort of thing, moving around, doing the things. How do you feel like that? What values did that instill in you that are important to you today?
I think just knowing how hard my dad worked, I had to show up every day to put in an equal amount of effort or better, because I knew that at the end of the day, I just had to be better off than the situation that we were in. And it was tough. I think growing up with 3 other siblings, you're naturally expected to be that role model. And so I carried that with me growing up. And then growing up in Forest Lawn didn't make it easy, because there's just systemic challenges there. You're not always set up to succeed. There's always a lot of situations that can take you off path. I grew up with some friends that ended up in the gang scene, and lost a few friends over it. And some of them are in jail. It's just one of those situations that you can easily get caught up and end up in a different part of life. So, luckily somehow I had the academic capabilities, and I ended up going to a better high school. I went to Western Canada High School for their IB program, but even then I got kicked out in grade 11 for fighting. And I just had to defend myself and my friends at the time, and I don't regret the decision at all. I ended up going to a different high school for a semester, and it was an eye-opening experience just to see how the different schools within the same city differ so much. And anyway, I ended up back at Western to graduate with my friends, and then at that point I had separated from my friends who were at the other schools that ended up in the gang scene, right? So I was able to separate. I went to University of Alberta, to study finance and accounting, and I think the rest is history, really. I ended up on the right path and stuck with it, but it was always the hard work and determination that I had to, just because I had that vision of being in a better spot, and that really motivated me. I guess seeing my dad wake up every day, showing up to work to earn that paycheck to pay for our food, and we weren't well off by any means. It was really a paycheck to paycheck childhood experience. And if the car broke down, that was when we had to put stuff on the credit card just to get by. So we needed that car. The car wasn't a fancy car. We had two vehicles that broke down during our childhood, but we'd spend $3 or $4 grand on this used car that would get us to and from school, my dad to work. My mom drove us everywhere, right? So she was driving all day and then making food for us. She didn't really work because there was just too much to look after at home with the 4 kids. And yeah, I think everyone really felt that obligation to pitch in. Whether we were kids, we had to be good students and parents mom had to be a good mother, my dad had to be a good father, and we all attacked life as immigrants collectively.
Right.
Yeah.
Right on. Now you started, we talked about this a little bit off camera, but you were at Deloitte for a long time, and then you left Deloitte to start McRally, which is accounting and advising, correct?
Correct.
Talk to me about kind of what that decision looked like and what were the key factors that...
Yeah, I worked at Deloitte for just over 8 years, and at the time I saw a lot of opportunity in the marketplace, and Deloitte was a really good firm to work at in terms of getting your skill set to the level it needs to be, and the exposure with the types of clients you get to work with. I got to work with, C-suite and executives. Every business challenge we dealt with, whether it was tax or accounting, it always started from the top. It was a top-down approach. So you got to see a lot of the ins and outs and just the strategy of a business. And so that had set me up to do McRally. I saw the opportunity in the marketplace to do more for the smaller clients, and really what it was all about at that time was to create my own opportunities, to control my own destiny. Growing up, when my dad ran his own business, he said something to me along the lines of, if you want full control over your life, your destiny, you really need to be doing your own thing, whether it's whatever it is, but running your own show, your own business. And that really stuck with me from a really young age. And so I was at that point at Deloitte where I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to go do my own thing. I see an opportunity in the marketplace. And I just jumped in. I found a business partner that was kind of at the same stage in his career. We worked together at Deloitte for a number of years, and then he went off to work for another company, but also saw the similar opportunities that I did, and we decided to go in on it together. It was funny though, but before we decided to start the firm though, we had different ideas. We were like, oh, should we go start a food truck? Should we sell this, sell that? Like we thought of everything that was exciting for us, but ultimately we were just like, okay, well, should we just do what we're good at, which is the accounting and the tax, finance, that stuff, right? So it just made sense to just stick with what we were good at and build around that. And that's when I put in my notice in 2015, and it was fun, it was exciting, it was scary, very scary, because I was giving up a huge, stable paycheck, stability for nothing essentially. I think I took home $17,000 or something like that in the first 12 months, like going from a 6-figure salary. We downgraded. I had just gotten married in 2014, and my wife's been very supportive, but through that time, after we got married, she had a vision of where our life would the path that it would go down. And 1 month into our marriage, I was like, I think I need to quit my job. I really want to start this thing. She's like, oh, great. Yeah, that'd be awesome. And I'm like, well, we also need to downgrade our lifestyle. So we were living in a condo downtown Calgary that we bought, and we had a luxury car. And I was like, okay, we need to sell the car, get something cheaper, and we need to move out of our condo, rent it out. And then we were renting, my buddy Sean had a place out in Bankview, and so we rented his suite and cut our expenses down significantly, to the point where I think we were living off like 20 or 25 grand a year, right? Because I wanted to give myself that opportunity to succeed. And a lot of businesses fail because you can't bring in the revenue quick enough to even pay for your personal, your lifestyle, your personal expenses, rent, whatever, right? And I knew that was going to be a huge hurdle. So setting myself up for success was important, and it meant having to make those sacrifices. And it's hard when you're in a relationship with someone and you're both living off of comfortable salaries and a comfortable lifestyle, to give it all up, and with the risk of failing, But I'm very glad and very grateful that Angel was able to support me behind that decision.
Never without sacrifice, right? And I'm sure that was the first of many. right?
Yeah, and it did come up again, even just this year with the brewery. You know, what we had a bunch of challenges, and I ultimately had to ask her to, we bought a house a few years ago, and there's, just due to the real estate market, we have some equity in the house, but I really needed to fund the brewery, so I had to get her to be on board to take a second mortgage, a HELOC on the house, just to cover some of those expenses, right? And it was a big amount, right? And it's risk to our family. But at the end of the day, I said, you know, we only live once, and if we're not putting in everything that we can, like, what's this all for? And so it was like all in, you know, go big or go home. And if we lose it all, that's fine. We have a strong footing to rebuild everything up really quick again. So I think having that safety net on the back of our mind helped make that decision quite a bit easier. Yeah, absolutely. But she didn't hesitate at all. She was like, okay, let's do it. You know, it was an easy signature, and we moved forward.
Right on. You mentioned that, you know, you chose McRally, the accounting and advising, first because that was something that you knew and you're comfortable with, right? And then, you know, fast forward, what is it, 7 years, 2023, now you have a brewery, you know? You just opened a couple months ago, or I guess 6 months ago-ish. Oh.
Yeah. So the story behind the brewery was that, you know, accountants, it's a high stress job, and some people get into the drinking habit, which was me. And at the time, it was actually funny, back in 2015, 2016, I had other friends we were just drinking after work consistently. And it got to the point where we were drinking 5 or 6 days a week together. And we'd always joke and make fun of the companies we were working for and other big companies, you know, evil corporations. But we became such good friends. We talked about everything, and we're like, well, we're spending so much money on booze. Why don't we try brewing our own beer and see how that goes? And at the time, my business partners, a couple of them had already been homebrewing for 10 years. Okay. So they had the experience. And so it became a collective of, you know, the 8 of us. We started homebrewing every week on Wednesday nights and sometimes on Sundays. And we entered into a few homebrewing competitions with our beer and took home, you know, 2nd and 3rd place a few times. And that really inspired us to consider commercialization. And some of the people in that homebrewing club ended up launching their own breweries within the city. And so that really got us going, really fired up and excited about considering commercialization. And so in 2018 was actually when we decided to go live with the brand, Evil Corporation. And that was inspired by the fact that we were all from corporate Calgary. And then we had that interest, that inspiration with 80s and 90s action films, you know, the ones with the ominous evil corpse in the background.
I love it, yeah.
Umbrella Corp from Resident Evil,
yep.
Weyland-Yutani, you know, OmniCorp. Yeah, so it was very playful, and I love that duality. There's a lot of duality in everything that we do. If you look throughout our space, there's, you know, more than 2 reasons why we picked a certain design element or why we approached something a certain way. Commercialized in 2018, so we were contract brewing through Last Spike and Field and Forge, and we launched our product onto the market just to test the market. We didn't have our own facility or anything like that. It was a huge capital commitment to invest in. So we leveraged other facilities just to see if our product was viable. And we gained traction really, really quick, to the point where we were looking at opening up our own facility, tap room. In 2019 was when we got the ball rolling on that. And of course, COVID hit. We had signed a lease down by Annex and the establishment in that area, off McLeod Trail and 42nd. And then COVID hit, and the numbers didn't make sense anymore. So we tried to renegotiate the terms with the landlord, and it just wasn't fruitful. So we ended up backing out of that deal. And a few months went on, and we stumbled on this location, this space. Landlord was being super cooperative and was offering a lot of tenant allowances to help us get going. So we signed the lease here 2.5 years ago and got the production space up and running really quick, and we were brewing and packaging out of here 2.5 years ago, and with the intention to build out this tap room as a phase 2 project. And the problem is nothing's to code in this building, right? So we were running into a lot of challenges with the city of Calgary, trying to get the permitting and getting everything to code. So that process delayed us a full 1.5 years. And obviously with delays comes cost, and basically ran out of money at the start of the year. So I had to go back to investors. I had to put some stuff on my credit cards. And then going into spring, that's when we did our line of credit on the house to keep funding this build out. And yeah, that's sort of how we ended up here.
Incredible, yeah, no doubt. Like it's crazy. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but the amount of sacrifices that one makes, when starting business and that sort of thing, and to the point where you talked about it, that not remortgaging, but taking another mortgage and these lines of credits and all these things that you take a lot of personal liability on, right? But to justify that, obviously you believe in what you're doing.
Oh, absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
So talk to me about that. Like, is it hard to I don't know, do you experience doubt ever in your endeavors and that sort of thing? Or what is it that keeps you motivated to, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm willing to make those sacrifices and take those and make it work?
Yeah, I think growing up, I've always been really stubborn with solving problems. I do recall growing up, even in math class, the teacher would be like, okay, this is how you solve this math problem. I would always find another way to think about the problem and present a different approach to solving it. And it was very unique to the teacher because they're like, no one's really done that before in their experience. And I've always been like that. So always trying to find ways around things. And because of that, I've had my failures and whatnot, but I see them as opportunities at the same time, learning opportunities. And so the problem for me is just having the drive and the endurance to go through it, like to stick with it and not give up, right? The tenacity. That's the hard part. Sometimes you don't have the energy to do it, but I don't give up. I just keep going. And do I have doubts? I think earlier I had a lot of doubts, but again, it was just problem solving to me. Whatever the problem is, there's always multiple solutions or multiple ways to approach the situation. So being able to solve problems consistently over time, you just build that confidence. And so, yeah, no matter what the situation I end up in now, I don't think it's unsolvable. Like, there's always something that you can work around, absolutely. And what I've found that's key and critical in all of that is just having the right people around you and the right support, because you need to, work with vendors, suppliers, even customers, investors. Like, all of those people are there to help you succeed. And a lot of the financial side of things is, they have in some form or fashion, they're tied into your business too. And so it's in everyone's best interest to succeed. And if anyone is there to help, to be able to pitch in with that, I think for the most part they would, right?
Right, yeah. You explained how you got from accounting to beer, but I'm curious, those are two drastically different industries, obviously. But where do you get fulfillment in your business? Like what keeps you coming back every day and doing the hard work that you do?
Yeah, so fulfillment for me is more intrinsically, I'm more intrinsically motivated. So for myself, it's about living out my own values with very little friction and resistance. That's how I define my own success. And as an entrepreneur, it's a great platform to be able to do that. It's I can dictate a lot of times how my day goes, how my year goes, right? It's very flexible, and it's just a great sandbox to be able to make the right decisions that align with your own values, and not having to compromise for someone else's sake, right? I think that's where I find my fulfillment. I don't think it matters what the business is. I think I love just problem solving and working with people. I can go run any company, and as long as I'm able to have full control over what I can do on a day-to-day basis, and if I love the people I'm working with, it makes a world of a difference.
Amazing. I read on your website, this ties in perfectly, that your tagline, if you will, is limitless. How does that translate into everything that you do, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, the context behind limitless is a lot of times I think society is set up structurally in a way that we're all brought up through a system, and we're all brought up into a certain way of thinking, to the point where we're handcuffed or shackled, and we create a lot of doubts and self-limiting beliefs that stop us from wanting to go and start your own business, wanting to go talk to that person, wanting to do this, wanting to do that. There's always that element of fear that's instilled in us because we're so structured and rigid in how we're brought up through society. And so I think the concept of limitless is if you can find a way around that self-limiting belief to remove that from yourself, there really is nothing out there that can stop you from doing what you want to achieve. There really isn't. If you can, and there's lots of examples out there, lots of entrepreneurs out there. Yeah, if you look at what Tesla, SpaceX, even for investors, if you look at, Warren Buffett and what he's been able to do with capital and growing wealth, just the amount of innovation out there and what's been accomplished. Do you think these people were able to do this with all these self-limiting beliefs? Like, that's the first thing, is it stops you from taking action. And sometimes you just need to hold your breath and jump into the deep end without knowing what the consequences are gonna be. You kind of just deal with it as it comes. Having that courage and leap of faith could take you a long way. You can't do it in every situation, obviously. I always say, like, if you fail to plan, then you're planning to fail. And so that still applies in a lot of situations. But you can't let your own mind psych you out from wanting to talk to that girl, or wanting to go raise $10 million, or trying to build that next prototype. It's a lot of times you just need to put yourself out there, you need to ask, and you'd be amazed at what can happen.
Incredible. So was that always your mentality from, when you were a young kid and that sort of thing? You said that you were at Deloitte for 8 years. Did you know that you were going to leave and do your own thing? Was this always the idea, or did it kind of come across?
Yeah, I think the way I was brought up, I adopted that entrepreneurial mindset at some point, and it really was about having control over your own destiny. And so even when I was at Deloitte, I was on the track to become partner one day, but I didn't see myself. The longer I stayed, the more I realized that I wasn't going to have full control over my life staying within that organization. And it's not a knock on the organization. I just wanted more for myself, more flexibility, more control over how I wanted to live my life, not working on other people's terms. So when I felt comfortable in the skills that I had, and I had the confidence, that's when I started brainstorming my exit. And it was probably a span of 5 months from when I decided, okay, I'm gonna go do something else, to actually putting in my notice and leaving. So, and I still keep in touch with a lot of the people from the firm, and it's just great to have that kind of culture and support behind you when you're going off to do your own thing. There were a few partners that laughed at my face and basically just doubted me, But that gave me fire and fuel to, and assurance that I was doing the right thing, because what I've learned through life was it's the doubters that's, I guess I learned that I kind of go against the grain a lot of times, right? And when there was doubt from certain people, I just knew that I was on the right path, going on the right path. And when you look at some of the greatest companies that have come up through the years, a lot of them started during the downturn. And that's what I did. When the economy was going down, I decided to give up my cushy job to go start a business. Super risky venture. Well, risky from the perspective that, you're venturing into uncharted territories for yourself without doing it before. And, most businesses fail within the first couple of years. So I don't regret the decision at all. I think it was exciting, it was scary, it was a good experience though, and for me, that's a big part of life is just having that life experience.
Incredible. I can tell, through our conversation, but also through reading about you, that helping others is at the core of what you do, And your business, McRally, that's what you do, isn't it? It's kind of, you help the smaller. Explain a little bit about what you do and how that ties into your values.
Yeah, so McRally, we have really segregated our offering into two categories. We have the smaller businesses, say $500,000 to $1 million. Those companies really need our help in getting the right structure in place to continue to grow. So it's about organization and doing all the right things to get to $1 million revenue as quick as possible. And we have a very specific approach on how to do that. And then the businesses that are over $1 million in revenue, they're always trying to hit that next mark, 3 million, 5 million, 10 million, whatever it is. And obviously with that ambition, you've got a lot of other things to consider. Your foundation has to be super tight, super solid, and you have to be able to look forward into the future and plan for that growth. So we go in as financial advisors or a fractional CFO to get those systems, that platform solidified so that they're able to look at their numbers and make very critical decisions, not just from the gut. Right? And being able to manage cash flow and access to capital, getting money to help you grow. So that's what we're good at is with those growing companies. We've done it dozens of times before, and it's just taking the formula that we have and applying it to different companies. In a nutshell is where our value proposition is. And we don't work well with every company. I mean, the way we approach things is very, very methodical, and you kind of have to have that abundance mindset and be open to a lot of different ideas, but also you need to be able to execute on what you say you're going to do. You have to be just as invested as we are. It really is a partnership. We're the financial partner of a business, and the mutual trust and respect has to be there. So if we think this is the right course of action based on what you said you wanted to achieve, we really have to be able to work through those challenges together as partners.
Awesome. Yeah. It sounds like it's a perfect business based on you're wanting to help people, right? And that's a critical moment between 500 and $1 million is people argue that's the hardest gap to bridge, right? So super interesting. As entrepreneurs, we talked about this a little bit off camera, but you're constantly on, you're constantly going, you're constantly doing the thing, and now you have two businesses, which is a lot. I'm curious as to how you charge your batteries. How do you reset? How do you make sure that you're showing up every day to the best of your ability?
Yeah, for me, it's that cliche saying. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So for me, it's about maintaining that 75-80% battery, that charge. You're not depleting yourself every day, and you're not always, it's good to be full, but you cannot, it's tough to maintain 100%. And my secret behind that is really when you meditate it brings a certain level of calmness. And I'm a student of Stoicism as well, so learning not to react to the extremes with everything that you're facing, being able to stay calm and giving yourself that time to process it. I think taking that and meditation into account, when you're practicing it frequently enough, it becomes part of your daily, how you deal with situations, right? So I don't have to take an hour out of my day once a week or whatever to meditate. I take that learning, the ability to stay calm through my situations throughout the day. So I'm not bouncing around, because that for me, bouncing around, it drains you. It does, it really does. So if you can keep that heart rate steady, low, and I think physical fitness is a huge component of it as well. Health. I always say, like, health is the most important thing. If you don't have your health, nothing else matters, right? Go talk to anyone at the hospital, who either was up there in their career or have really close loved ones. Ask them what's important to them at that moment in time. You can't do anything if you don't have good health. So I really invest time into maintaining a good physical health. I work out 3 days a week, sometimes 5, it just depends, but it doesn't require a lot. Like even a walk, 45-minute walk does wonders for you, right? But just being able to carry that whole idea of the meditation and stoicism with you on a day-to-day basis. And I guess on Fridays, I block off my mornings for personal development and taking time to reflect on what I've done, where I'm at, looking forward to just make sure I'm realigned with where I want to go. I think that's very important. And sometimes you have a stream of conscience of some awesome ideas when you're not thinking about all the problems in your life. Giving yourself that space and time, and writing things down, it really helps quite a bit.
You mentioned, I love the idea, meditation, stoicism, health, all these things are crucial. Have you always been that way? Has that always been valuable to you? Or you mentioned the idea of kind of bouncing around, right? Was that you before and then you found these things, or?
Yeah, it's been since I left Deloitte, the big firm, to start my own thing. That whole journey has been about finding out who I really am and diving into what my values are and being able to manage the volatility in my life, right? Because that volatility always leads you to some challenges or some situation that doesn't end up working in your way, or sometimes leading to failure, really. But for me, it was about maintaining a certain level of energy and motivation and excitement. And my whole spiritual journey is essentially what I went down the path of, led me to philosophy, Eastern philosophy, Western philosophy. Did a lot of reading and studying there, and really aligning. I really resonated with the whole Stoicism philosophy, way of living, and I'm just a student at life, and these concepts are very fascinating to me, but I'm also just trying to learn how it all works. But the bits and pieces that I've been able to put into practice has been very, very helpful, very beneficial to me.
How do you practice that? Is it through conversation with others? Is it through reading?
That helps a lot, reading, but ultimately it's about creating that sense of self-awareness, catching yourself in those situations when, let's say, someone says something to you and it triggers you, catching yourself at that specific moment to be like, okay, this is how I'm feeling, but I do not need to react in a way that shows that I'm feeling like a certain way, right? Like, I'm super upset, but you don't need to show that emotion. You can keep it internalized and give yourself the time to think about it, to process it before reacting. And usually when you give yourself that time and space, you realize, okay, well, it's just another problem. And it's okay, it'll all work itself out. Or here's a solution, right? And then on the flip side, it doesn't have to be a negative thing, it can be a positive thing. Someone could be like, and I don't know if it's good or bad. So when when COVID hit, my business partner and I had to part ways. And we parted ways on amicable terms. I ended up taking his client list and whatnot. So a friend of mine, that summer, we went out to the Okanagan and he paid for a helicopter experience, like wine tasting helicopter experience. We went to like 4 or 5 different wineries in a helicopter, and it was amazing. It was fantastic. Was it really and it was right on my birthday too, in August. But it was a celebration of my birthday, but also of, you know, having full reign of McRally at the time. And it was a really nice gesture. I was very grateful and everything, but my emotions at the time didn't reflect how excited I was. And I don't know if he felt that I was being ungrateful or whatnot, but I did have to, when I kind of looked back, I was like, okay, you know what? I could have been more excited about everything. And we had drinks like a month or two later, and, you know, I took that opportunity to express to him how that meant a lot to me, and it was one of the coolest experiences. Even though my emotions at the time didn't necessarily reflect that, you know, but it was important to me that I had to let him know that how much it meant to me and how excited I really was, because I think because of the stoicism thing, you know, you don't react, you end up not reacting to both ends of the extreme, right?
Yeah, interesting. Do you find that's a great example of that? Do you find that not hinders you, but you know, this lack of showing emotion actively, has that come up in other areas of your life as well?
I think it does, and sometimes I may not be. The challenge I have is I always have things running through my head, always on the go, and there could be moments where I should be more excited, and the key is I need to catch myself in that moment. And I also don't want to be like not genuine about it. So sometimes when I'm reacting a certain way, that is who I am. But I think I want people to understand that I'm actually a lot more excited than I show.
Yeah.
And I think building that relationship with people and that trust, and over time they'll know, okay, so when Quan's this excited, he's actually this excited, right?
Yeah.
And when he's not saying anything, he's probably really freaking pissed off or whatever, right?
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. We touched on failures a little bit there. I'm curious, has there been one failure or one mistake or anything like that kind of sticks out from the rest over your entrepreneurial journey? And what was the learning from that?
With McRally, I think the biggest thing as a startup business, especially if this probably applies to any business actually. So when you're out grinding, you're meeting people, trying to generate sales, you close the deal, you go service that sale. Early on, that's what we did. We would sell, service. But there was no sales pipeline a sales funnel that we maintained. And I remember we went a few months without bringing anything in. And so I couldn't pay for things. We were just dry for 2 or 3 months. I think a lot of up and coming businesses experience that. So I think that was a huge learning, that you always have to be out there, especially if you're the one driving sales, you always have to have something in the hopper. The other failure, what did you say? Failure?
Learning. Better way of putting it.
It's fine. I mean, you fail and you learn, and it ends up being a learning. It's an opportunity, right, to grow, to be better. There's a lot of things, like just learning what kind of a leader you want to become. I've had people quit on me because wasn't the best leader in the early stages of McRally. I would say certain things I shouldn't have said, and things like that, and rub people the wrong way. The brewery has been quite a bit more of a humbling experience, where we were basically planning week to week instead of planning out months at a time. So you're always running into, I mean, when we dumped our first batch of beer, that really hurt. Like it's not like crazy expensive to brew, but also it's like not, if you dump enough beer like that'll drain your bank account pretty quick, right? So, and all it was there was like, just do more test batches on a smaller scale system. Don't rush to scale upwards so quick, right? Really dial it in first before you spend all that money to brew a big batch. Sometimes things can go wrong, but I think part of the challenge as well is we have very high standards for ourselves. So if the beer really isn't quite there, sometimes we don't want it to hit the market because, your reputation is on the line a lot of times. So we've learned from that. We have put out subpar beers before, and the feedback has not always been the greatest. And you do that enough times, and you can't be the best brewery out there if that's the approach that you're taking.
But like you said, you take those failures, for lack of a better term, and turn those into opportunities, right? And realistically, that's what makes every business better. Is taking that feedback or learning from that mistake or whatever the case may be. So what does success mean to you? What does that look like? How do you measure it?
Yeah, success to me, I think is really, for me, because I'm intrinsically motivated, and to me what matters is that I'm living out my values day to day. I'm able to do that. I'm not going counter to what I believe in, what I cherish. Like, relationships are huge to me. I don't want to burn bridges with anybody. I want to be there to support people whenever I can, with whatever means I have, whether it's time or money, right? Even the small gestures go a long way. Success is not about money for me. It really is about living life the way I want to, and not having someone else direct the direction of my life. And being in the company of great people, being able to collaborate with awesome people who share the same passions and have the same drive for whatever their success is, but being able to support each other through that journey. I think for me, being able to do that is what I see as, I don't need to have $1 billion. But I think if I do what I'm doing really well, and things work out, and I continue to be blessed, I don't think that's outside of the realm of possibilities. But, I did get to the point where earning that high salary, living that lifestyle, it just didn't really mean anything at the end of the day. The nice fancy car, the fancy house, they're all material things. You can't take that to the grave with you.
Have there been any unexpected outcomes? When you start mapping out starting a business, or now you're 2 businesses in, there's always these things that come up, whether positive or negative, that you don't really expect, right? Mm-hmm. Is there any that kind of stand out in your journey that you couldn't have planned for, but were positive or negative? And
yeah, every day I wake up and I never really know what's ahead of me. I could have everything planned out, scheduled, but there's constant curveballs thrown at you. Like 2 weeks ago, I had one of my contractors at McRally resign. And I thought everything was going well and we were gonna grow together, but you get those situations, and now I have to backfill. And the brewery, we were supposed to be packaging last week, but we were running into issues with our canning line, and beer was coming out too foamy, and we didn't package everything until yesterday. And we're running out of stock in in the warehouse and our sales guys have been selling, moving a lot of volume in the last few weeks, and we were running low on product. And it's like, okay, well, how do we get our product back into the warehouse quick enough so that these sales guys can keep going, because we're paying them. And so you never know. Things can go really well. Like we signed a big client last week that starts January 1. That's going to add a substantial amount to our top line next year. And I didn't know I was going to close that deal. We just had a conversation, one thing led to the next, and they're like, okay, we want to work with you. Sent our proposal, and they signed it, and we're like, okay, awesome. So you have like those moments, and then you've got, it's very up and down, but it's part of the journey, and it's a lot of fun for me.
Right. How do you decide how to manage your time? Between all the things you've got going on, you've got your family, you've got your two businesses, your health and meditation and stoicism, all these different things that you have going on. How do you prioritize for yourself? How do you decide what you're going to do at any given time?
It is really priorities. Comes down to priorities. So what do you prioritize first? For me, it's health. So I always make sure that I do my workouts. And the easiest way is just to put it in your calendar. Treat it as a business meeting or a task that you have to do. And the trick with working out is just keep it short. Like if you put it in for half an hour and you end up at the gym for an hour, great. But the hardest thing is just showing up, right? And then family, whenever something with family comes up, I actually drop things and I'll go tend to family stuff to the best of my ability. And then obviously all the work stuff between McRally and Evil Corp, and it really does come down to priorities. What do I need to, and I look at everything from a strategic level. I do really want to, because I have two teams that I'm managing now on each business. So they can handle a lot of the things that need to be dealt with on a day-to-day basis. I need to just stay focused on the strategic action items, the actions that will take the business forward, right? If I answer half of my emails, like most of my emails, if I answered or not, may not necessarily bring my business forward, right? But if I need to go talk to the bank to get financing to pay for equipment, that takes priority over 90% of my emails.
Responding to that email that might not matter, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you always been good at that prioritization?
It comes with experience. You learn. Actually, what's useful is the Eisenhower matrix. It's you've got your 4 quadrants. So one axis is how urgent something is, and the other one is how important it is. So if it's urgent and important, that's what you want to focus on. If it's urgent and not important, put it on your to-do list. Not important, not urgent, don't even touch it. And then urgent but not important, or whatever the other one, you can delegate that. But eventually you can delegate most of it, right, as you build out your teams. Just if they have the experience, the knowledge, the skill, whatever, hand it off. And then you can focus on what you really need to focus on.
That's a solid framework. That's good. Awesome.
Yeah, so just practicing that, at first you can probably put everything into one of the 4 boxes, but over time it becomes systemized in your mind, so you automatically know what's in that top quadrant, the urgent, important, right? And then you start delegating those things off, and that's what allows you to create that space and capacity.
Right on. Accounting, beer, what's next?
That's it.
That's it.
That's it for now. I have a pretty big vision in terms of where I want to see each business go in the next 5 to 10 years. And so my focus will be on growing those 2 businesses, just doing more of everything, outdoing ourselves every single day. And it's all about just bringing people together, providing more value, whether it's products, services, experiences, We just want to create something awesome out there. I use each company as a platform for our team members to get together to build something collectively. I'm not there dictating what has to get done and whatnot. We're brainstorming together. We're holding each other accountable, holding each other's hands through the good times and the bad times. But at the end of the day, it's when you look at McRally, what it is today is not a result of what I wanted out of the business. It's a reflection of what each and every person has wanted at some point or another. Someone brings an idea to the table, we explore it. If everyone's on board, we try to make it happen. And so you do that enough times, it becomes part of the team, right? The culture is them. It's not me. I'm just there to support.
It's the culture that pushes things forward, right? Mm-hmm. Do you find that there are synergies between the two businesses?
I can see the synergies. They definitely haven't been maximized. I have to be mindful because I have clients within McRally. I can't give off the impression or perception that I'm spending all of my time in the brewery, which I'm not. I think 10% of my time goes into the brewery, and the rest of it, I do prioritize McRally over the brewery. So, yeah, I just have to be careful in how I manage that perception and where I spend my efforts. And I have other people I need to be accountable to as well. So it's tough to find that balance. But I think I'm doing an okay job right now at maintaining that. But yeah, if I have a client that's like, hey, I need some beer, you want to supply, or let's work out a deal, or hey, we want to rent out your tap room or your boardroom. Yeah, absolutely. And I think on LinkedIn the other day, on my professional LinkedIn, even though it's McRally focused, I said, hey, our brewery has some spaces that you guys can rent out. Reach out if you want to chat further. That's a great opportunity. I have thousands of connections on LinkedIn, and it was a great way of getting the brand out there.
Right. Awesome. Is there anything that we might not have touched on that you want to promote or talk about
Yeah, I think our biggest need right now is just getting Evil Corp known in the world. Honestly, if you live in Calgary, you're into craft beer or just a different experience, come check us out. We could really use the support, and we want to show you what we're all about and what we're doing. And I think it'd be cool for people to experience that and be part of that journey as we grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So where can people find and follow you, the brewery, McRally, all these different things?
Yeah, Instagram's the best. I'm fairly active on that. I don't really use anything else. So Quan_Lee for my personal Instagram, and then Evil Corp Brew is that Instagram. And McRally doesn't really have much social presence, but it's okay. We'll get there.
Right on. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciate your insights on all this, and yeah, it's been excellent.
Appreciate it.
Right on. Thanks.
Very grateful.